He pulled the trigger, then froze. The man gasping on the floor wasn't just the traitor who sold him out. It was his own brother. And as the blood spread, one question burned louder than the gunshot. Who set them up? Welcome back, my amazing family and friends. If you're ready to dive into this unforgettable story, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Tomorrow, I'll bring you another incredible tale you absolutely can't miss. Let's get started. And don't forget to like and share to help our community grow. The Georgia sun beat down mercilessly on the sprawling construction site in downtown Atlanta, but Vincent Caldwell barely felt it. At 42, his weathered hands had built more than half the skyline visible from where he stood, 15 years of sweat, sacrifice, and strategic partnerships that had transformed Caldwell Brothers construction from a two-man operation into an empire worth $70 million. Caldwell Brothers. The name still sent pride coursing through his veins. Vincent's phone buzzed. Another client, another project, another million in the bank. He silenced it without looking. Today was about more than money. It was the anniversary. 15 years since he and Julian had signed the papers, shook hands with calloused palms, and promised each other, blood before business, always. Boss, we need your signature on the Monroe contract. Tommy, his site manager, jogged toward him with a clipboard, his face flushed from the heat. Vincent scrawled his name without reading the fine print, something he'd normally never do, but his mind was elsewhere. On Julian. On the brother who'd been radio silent for 3 weeks. 3 weeks since their last argument. 3 weeks since Julian's eyes had flickered with something Vincent couldn't name when they discussed the expansion into Charleston. 3 weeks since Vincent had brushed off the gnawing sensation in his gut that whispered, "Something's wrong." "You good, boss?" Tommy asked, concern creasing his young face. "You seem distracted." Vincent forced a smile that didn't reach his steel-gray eyes. "Just thinking about the old days. You know, Julian and I started this company with one truck and a dream. Everyone knows that story, sir. It's legendary." Legendary. The word tasted bitter. Legends were supposed to have happy endings. Vincent's phone buzzed again. This time, he looked. A text from Naomi, his lawyer and the only person whose judgment he trusted as much as his own, or at least, as much as he'd trusted Julian's. "Vincent. Emergency. My office. Now. Don't call Julian. Don't tell anyone. Please." His blood turned to ice. Naomi Jackson didn't panic. In 12 years of working together, through lawsuits, hostile takeovers, and IRS audits, he'd never seen her rattle. She was a fortress in a power suit, a brilliant black woman whose strategic mind had saved his ass more times than he could count. If Naomi was scared, the world was ending. Vincent's truck ate up the miles between the construction site and Naomi's downtown office in 23 minutes, a drive that should have taken 40. His mind conjured 1,000 scenarios, each worse than the last. An accident. A lawsuit. The IRS again. Anything but. He couldn't finish the thought. Naomi's receptionist waved him through without the usual pleasantries, her eyes averted. Bad sign. Vincent's heart hammered against his ribs as he pushed open the heavy oak door to Naomi's corner office. She sat behind her desk, her usually immaculate braids slightly disheveled, her brown eyes red-rimmed. In front of her lay a folder so thick it looked like a novel. Next to it, a bottle of bourbon, unopened, and 2 glasses. "Sit down, Vincent." Her voice was steady, but underneath, he heard the tremor. "Naomi, what?" "Sit down." He Saturday. She slid the folder across the polished mahogany desk. Her fingers trembled, just barely, but Vincent noticed. He'd always noticed the details. "I need you to understand something before you open that," Naomi said, her lawyer's mask cracking at the edges. "I've known you for 12 years. I've seen you build an empire from nothing. I've watched you sacrifice your marriage, your health, your peace of mind for that company. For your brother." The way she said brother made his stomach drop. "What is this?" Vincent's hand hovered over the folder, suddenly afraid to touch it. "Evidence." Naomi's jaw tightened. 3 months ago, you asked me to conduct a routine audit for the Charleston expansion. Standard procedure. I found discrepancies. Small ones at first. 5,000 here, 10,000 there. I thought maybe it was accounting errors. Vincent's mouth went dry. But I kept digging because that's what you pay me to do. Vincent. She paused, swallowing hard. Your brother has been systematically embezzling from the company for 6 years. He's siphoned off $18 million. The words hit him like a physical blow. The office tilted. His vision narrowed to pinpoints. That's not all. Naomi's voice cracked. He's been in negotiations with Titan Industries for 8 months. He's selling them the company, your company, for $53 million. The contracts are already drawn. The deal closes Friday. In 3 days. No. The word escaped Vincent's lips as barely a whisper. No, Julian wouldn't. There's more. Naomi opened the folder, revealing bank statements, emails, photographs. He's been planning to frame you for the embezzlement. He's already planted false evidence in your office computer. When the deal closes, you'll be arrested for fraud. He walks away with his split of the sale plus the $18 million he's already hidden offshore. You go to prison. Vincent stared at the documents. His brother's signature. His brother's emails. His brother's betrayal in black and white. The boy who'd held his hand on the first day of school. The teenager who'd cried at their father's funeral and promised they'd always have each other. The man who'd stood as best man at his wedding and said, blood before business, always. Where is he? Vincent's voice came out cold, foreign to his own ears. Vincent, we need to go to the police. Where is he? Naomi flinched. The old warehouse. Pier 17. His meeting with the Titan Industries representatives tonight at 9 p.m. to finalize the contracts. Vincent stood, his chair clattering backward. His hand shook, not with fear, but with rage so pure it felt like fire in his veins. Vincent, please. Naomi reached for him, but he was already moving toward the door. Don't do something you can't take back. He paused at the threshold, his back to her. He already did. The door closed behind him with a finality that sounded like a coffin lid. The warehouse at Pier 17 hadn't been used in years. Vincent knew because he owned it, or thought he did. Now, staring at the rusted metal door, he wondered what else Julian had stolen while wearing the mask of brotherhood. 9:17 p.m. The Mercedes was parked in the shadows, Julian's car, unmistakable with its vanity plate, Caldwell 2. Second born. Always second, never first. Had that been it? Had Julian spent 15 years choking on Vincent's shadow? Vincent's hand moved to the gun in his jacket, a Glock 19 he'd bought after the construction site robberies 3 years ago. He'd never fired it outside a range. Never imagined he'd need to. Never imagined his target would share his blood. The door opened soundlessly. Vincent had oiled these hinges himself a decade ago, back when they'd stored equipment here. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd maintained the very place where his brother would sell his soul. Voices echoed from deeper inside. Vincent moved through the darkness like a ghost, his construction boots silent on the concrete. The warehouse opened into a vast space, moonlight streaming through broken skylights, illuminating a scene that made his heart stop. Julian stood in the center, bathed in silver light. Even now, even knowing everything, Vincent's breath caught. His little brother. 2 years younger, same grey eyes, same strong jaw their father had passed down. But where Vincent's face was weathered by sun and honest work, Julian's was smooth, pampered. When had that happened? When had Julian stopped working alongside him and started, whatever this was? 3 men in expensive suits stood with Julian, their briefcases open on a makeshift table, wooden pallets stacked with plywood. Vincent recognized one of them, Richard Ashford, CEO of Titan Industries. The snake who tried to buy them out 5 years ago. The offer Vincent had refused without a second thought. Blood before business. And the offshore accounts are secure. Ashford's voice carried across the empty space. No traces back to the source. Julian laughed, a sound Vincent didn't recognize. Cold. Calculating. My brother's too trusting to even check. He still thinks we're partners. Still thinks I'm the same kid who used to worship him. The words were bullets, each one finding its mark. And the fraud charges. Another suit asked. You're certain they'll stick? I've planted enough evidence to bury him for 20 years. Julian's smile was visible even from Vincent's hiding spot behind a steel support beam. Vincent Caldwell, empire builder, brought down by his own greed. Meanwhile, I'll be in the Cayman Islands, living the life I should have had all along. No guilt. Ashford pressed, something almost like respect in his voice. He is your brother. Julian's pause lasted 3 seconds too long. He was my jailer. Every decision, every client, every dollar. It all went through Vincent. Do you know what it's like to build something with your bare hands and have someone else take all the credit? To be introduced as Julian Caldwell, Vincent's brother, instead of your own name. So this is revenge? Ashford asked. This is freedom. Vincent stepped into the light. 4 heads snapped toward him, shock painting their faces white. But Vincent only saw Julian, the way his brother's eyes widened, the way his mouth formed a perfect O of surprise, the way his hand instinctively moved toward his pocket. Looking for what? A weapon? An escape route? Mercy? Vincent, Julian's voice cracked. For a heartbeat, he was 12 again, caught stealing candy from the corner store, looking at Vincent to save him. Not this time. Gentlemen, Vincent said, his voice preternaturally calm. Leave. Now wait just a minute, Ashford started. The gun appeared in Vincent's hand like magic. He didn't point it at anyone, just let it hang at his side, a promise of violence. I said, leave. They left. Expensive shoes slapping concrete, briefcases forgotten, 3 cowards fleeing the scene of their conspiracy. The warehouse door clanged shut, the sound reverberating like a bell tolling. Brothers. Alone. It's not what it looks like, Julian said, but his voice carried no conviction. $18 million. Vincent's words fell like stones. 6 years of stealing from me. From us. And Friday, you were going to send me to prison. Vincent, I can explain. Explain. The word exploded from Vincent's chest, echoing off metal and concrete. Explain how you looked me in the eye every single day and lied? Explain how you stood at Dad's grave and promised we'd honor his legacy together? Explain how you were going to destroy everything we built. Julian's mask crumbled. Everything you built. It was always you. Vincent the visionary. Vincent the leader. Vincent who everyone respected while I was just there. Just the brother. Just the second name on the contracts. I gave you half of everything. Vincent's hand tightened on the gun. 50-50. Always. Every decision together. Every profit split down the middle. What more did you want? I wanted to matter. Julian's voice broke. I wanted to be seen. But you're like Dad. You take up all the oxygen in the room. There's nothing left for anyone else. Tears streamed down Julian's face, and something in Vincent's chest twisted. This was his brother. The boy he'd protected from bullies. The teenager he'd taught to drive. The best man at his wedding. The traitor who'd stabbed him in the back. You could have talked to me, Vincent whispered. You could have told me you felt that way. We could have worked it out. Instead, you chose this. I chose freedom, Julian said, but his voice wavered. You chose betrayal. The gun rose. Vincent didn't remember lifting it, but suddenly it was pointing at his brother's chest. Julian's eyes went wide, all pretense stripped away, leaving only fear. Vincent, please. You were going to send me to prison. Ruin my life. Take everything. And for what? Pride? Jealousy? Was 18 million not enough? I'm your brother. Julian's voice climbed to a desperate pitch. No. Vincent's finger moved to the trigger. My brother died 6 years ago when you made the first transfer. I just didn't know it yet. Vincent, don't. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. We can fix this. Please. The warehouse held its breath. Moonlight painted everything in shades of gray. No black, no white. Just 2 brothers in the space between salvation and damnation. Vincent thought of their father, dead 10 years now, who'd made them promise to always protect each other. He thought of the company they'd built from nothing. He thought of the blood they shared, the DNA that made them family whether he wanted it or not. And then he thought of Naomi's face, the betrayal in black and white, the prison sentence waiting for him, the empire Julian would have stolen while wearing his smile. I loved you, Vincent said, and pulled the trigger. The gunshot split the night. Julian crumpled, his white shirt blooming red, his eyes wide with shock and something that might have been understanding. He hit the concrete with a sound Vincent would hear for the rest of his life. Vincent stood frozen, the gun smoking in his hand, watching his brother's chest rise and fall in shuddering gasps. Julian's mouth moved, forming words without sound, blood bubbling at his lips. And then, silence. The kind of silence that drowns everything. Vincent dropped to his knees beside the body, beside Julian, and the gun clattered from his numb fingers. His hands hovered over the wound, useless, shaking. The boy who'd held his hand on the first day of school stared at nothing, his grey eyes empty, reflecting moonlight like broken glass. Julian. Vincent's voice was small, childlike. Jules, wake up. Come on, wake up. But the dead don't wake. The blood on his hands was still warm when the truth hit him harder than the gunshot that had echoed through the warehouse. The man dying at his feet wasn't just a traitor. He was his brother. And now, there was no taking it back. Time became meaningless. Vincent didn't know if he'd been kneeling beside Julian's body for minutes or hours. The blood had stopped being warm. That's all he knew. His brother's blood had cooled on his hands, staining the creases of his palms like a map of his sins. His phone had been ringing. 17 times. He counted each ring as if they were prayers he'd never learned to say. The 18th call, he answered. Vincent Caldwell, if you don't pick up this phone in the next 5 seconds, I'm calling the police. Naomi's voice was sharp enough to cut through his fog. Vincent, please. I killed him. The words felt foreign in his mouth, like speaking a language he'd never learned. Naomi, I killed my brother. Silence. Then, where are you? Pier 17. The warehouse. Don't move. Don't touch anything else. Don't call anyone. I'm 15 minutes away. Her voice shifted, softened just a fraction. Vincent, listen to me very carefully. Do you hear sirens? He listened. Nothing but the lap of water against the pier and his own ragged breathing. No. Good. That means Ashford and his people haven't called it in yet. They're complicit in fraud. They won't risk exposure. We have a window, but it's small. Stay on the phone with me. He called me his jailer, Naomi. Vincent's voice cracked. He said I took up all the oxygen. Maybe he was right. Maybe I. Stop. The word cracked like a whip. You don't get to make him the victim. He stole from you. He was sending you to prison. He made his choices, Vincent. All of them. And I made mine. Vincent stared at the gun, still lying where he dropped it. I chose murder. You chose survival. There's a difference. Is there? Naomi didn't answer. In the background, he heard her car engine, the squeal of tires taking a corner too fast. I'm 10 minutes out. Vincent, I need you to think. Did anyone see you arrive? Security cameras? Witnesses? No cameras. This place has been dead for years. And Ashford's people, they ran. Good. That's good. We can work with that. He heard the lawyer in her, the strategist, already building a case. What about the gun? Is it registered? Yes. To me. Damn it. A pause. Okay. Okay, we'll handle it. Self-defense. He threatened you. You felt your life was in danger. Naomi, he was unarmed. The silence stretched like taffy. You're sure? Her voice had gone very quiet. Vincent forced himself to look at Julian's body, really look. The expensive suit, the Italian leather shoes, the Rolex catching moonlight. He made himself check the pockets with hands that shook so badly he could barely function. No gun. No knife. Nothing but a wallet, car keys, and a phone. He was unarmed, Vincent confirmed, the words tasting like poison. Then we have a problem. Naomi's legal mind was already racing. He could hear it in her tone. First-degree murder. Premeditated. You went there with a gun, Vincent. You knew what he'd done, and you. I know what I did. The shout echoed through the warehouse, and for a moment, Vincent saw his father's face in the shadows. Disappointed. Ashamed. I know exactly what I did, Naomi. I killed my brother. My baby brother. The kid I taught to ride a bike. There. Vincent. Stop. Breathe. I need you to breathe. He couldn't. The air wouldn't come. His chest constricted, his vision tunneled, and suddenly he was drowning in the space between who he'd been and what he'd become. A killer. Fratricidal. Damned. Vincent. Naomi's voice cut through the panic. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Count with me. 1, 2, 3. He counted. 10 breaths. 20. Until the world stopped spinning. Good, Naomi said. That's good. Now listen to me. I'm 6 minutes away. When I get there, we're going to figure this out. Together. Do you trust me? Did he? Vincent looked at his hands, still stained with Julian's blood. Did he trust anyone anymore? Could he? Yes, he whispered. Because what else was there? Then hold on. I'm almost there. The line stayed open. Vincent listened to the sound of her driving, the background noise of the city at night, anything to anchor him to reality. His eyes kept drifting back to Julian's face, frozen in eternal shock. I'm sorry, Vincent thought. I'm so sorry. But sorry didn't resurrect the dead. Naomi's Audi screeched to a stop outside the warehouse at 9:47 p.m. Vincent heard her heels clicking on concrete, quick and purposeful, and then she was there, a 5'6" force of nature in a tailored suit, her dark eyes taking in everything, the body, the blood, the gun, Vincent's shattered expression. Oh, Vincent. The words were barely a breath. She knelt beside him, her hand on his shoulder, warm and real and alive. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They just stared at what used to be Julian Caldwell. Tell me everything, Naomi said finally. Every word exchanged. Every movement. Everything. Vincent recounted it mechanically. Ashford, the conversation, the confrontation, Julian's words, the gun, the trigger. Naomi listened without interruption, her lawyer's mind cataloguing every detail. When he finished, she stood and paced, her heels clicking like a metronome counting down his remaining freedom. The Titan Industries representatives, she said. They're witnesses. They saw you with the gun. They know you had motive. When Julian's body is discovered, they'll connect the dots. So I'm going to prison. Vincent said it without inflection, a simple statement of fact. Not if we move fast. Naomi pulled out her phone, her fingers flying across the screen. Ashford and his people are criminals too. They were conspiring to commit fraud, to help Julian embezzle millions. They have just as much to lose if this comes out. What are you saying? I'm saying we have leverage. Her eyes met his, hard and calculating. They ran when you pulled the gun. They left their briefcases, their contracts, all the evidence of their conspiracy. If they report this, they go down too. It's mutually assured destruction. You want to, what? Blackmail them into silence. I want to buy you time. Naomi crouched in front of him, forcing him to meet her gaze. Vincent, you're not thinking clearly. You're in shock. But I need you to understand something. You can't turn yourself in. Not yet. Not like this. Why not? I killed him. I deserve. You deserve a fighting chance. Her voice rose, passion breaking through her professional facade. You built an empire from nothing. You employed 300 people. You gave back to this community. One act, one terrible, irreversible act in a moment of betrayal, doesn't erase all of that. It doesn't erase Julian either. Naomi's jaw tightened. No, it doesn't. But Julian made his choices, and you made yours. Now we deal with the consequences. Smartly. Vincent wanted to argue, to insist on turning himself in, on facing justice. But a small, desperate part of him, the part that wanted to live, to breathe, to somehow survive this nightmare, listened. What do you need me to do? He asked. First, we secure the scene. Those briefcases contain evidence of Julian's fraud. We take them. Second, we dispose of the gun properly. No, don't look at me like that. I'm not helping you cover up a murder. I'm preserving evidence that might save your life. Third, we contact Ashford. Carefully. And Julian. Vincent's voice broke on his brother's name. Naomi's expression softened. We can't leave him here. But we can't move him either, not without more help. Vincent, I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Who else knows about what Julian did? Who else saw Naomi's evidence? Just you and me. And Tommy? Your site manager? No. I didn't tell anyone. Good. That's good. She stood, pulling out her phone again. I'm calling someone. A fixer. Someone who handles complicated situations. Naomi, no. Vincent, you have two choices. Her voice was steel. Turn yourself in right now, spend the next 30 years in prison while Ashford and Titan Industries walk away clean, never facing consequences for their part in this. Or trust me. Trust that there might be another way. A way where justice is actually served. Vincent looked at his brother's body one more time. Julian had betrayed him. Yes. Had tried to destroy him. But did that justify this? Did anything? What would you do if someone you loved, someone you trusted with everything, betrayed you so completely that it destroyed your entire world? Could you forgive them, or would rage consume you too? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear your perspective. How? Vincent whispered. How do we make this right? Naomi's smile was grim. We don't. But maybe we can make it mean something. Maybe we can make sure Julian's betrayal comes to light, that Titan Industries pays for their crimes, that the truth comes out. All of it. Even if the truth destroys me. Even then. But on your terms, not theirs. You deserve that much. Vincent closed his eyes, weighing damnation against damnation. Both paths led to hell, but maybe Naomi's offered a chance at redemption along the way. Make the call, he said. Naomi nodded and stepped away, her voice low as she spoke to whoever was on the other end. Vincent stayed with Julian, his hand hovering over his brother's cooling face. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so goddamn sorry. But I'm going to make this mean something. I swear it. The dead, of course, didn't answer. But somewhere in the darkness, Vincent thought he heard his father's voice. Fix what you've broken, son. Whatever it takes. The night had only just begun. The woman who arrived at 11:34 p.m. was not what Vincent expected. She emerged from a black SUV wearing jeans and a leather jacket, her dark skin catching the ambient light from the street lamps. She was maybe 35, with sharp eyes that missed nothing and an easy confidence that spoke of someone who'd seen worse than a body in a warehouse. Mr. Caldwell, she said, extending a hand. Sienna Rhodes. Ms. Jackson called me. Vincent stared at her hand, still stained with his brother's blood. Sienna didn't flinch. She just lowered her hand and turned to survey the scene with clinical efficiency. Former FBI, Naomi explained quietly. She consults on sensitive matters. Discreet. Trustworthy. There's a dead body, Vincent said hollowly. How discreet can this possibly be? Sienna crouched beside Julian, checking vitals even though it was obviously futile, professional habit. Your brother's been dead approximately 90 minutes. Rigor mortis hasn't set in yet. No witnesses except the Titan Industries representatives who fled. No cameras in this facility. She stood, brushing off her knees. Mr. Caldwell, I'm going to be blunt, you have options, but they're all bad. The question is which version of bad you can live with. I can't live with any of this. Vincent's voice was raw. I killed my brother. Yes, you did. Sienna's directness was almost refreshing. And now you get to decide what that means. Does it mean you're a murderer who destroyed his life in a moment of rage? Or does it mean you're a man who was pushed to the breaking point by betrayal and is now trying to make it right? How is any of this making it right? By exposing the truth. Naomi stepped forward, her briefcase in hand. She opened it, revealing copies of all the evidence, the bank statements, the emails, the contracts with Titan Industries. Julian didn't just betray you, Vincent. He betrayed every employee at Caldwell Brothers. Every client who trusted your name. Every subcontractor who relied on your reputation. His fraud could have brought down the entire company, put 300 people out of work. So I'm supposed to be a hero. Vincent's laugh was bitter. I murdered him, Naomi. There's no spin that makes me the good guy. No, Sienna interjected. But there is a path that brings justice. Real justice. Not just for Julian, but for everyone he hurt. She walked to the forgotten briefcases, flipping through the documents. Ashford and Titan Industries have been doing this for years, finding vulnerable companies, exploiting insider information, committing fraud. Julian was just their latest accomplice. If this goes public the right way, it could bring down an entire criminal enterprise. And I go to prison for murder, Vincent finished. Maybe. Sienna met his eyes. Or maybe you become a whistleblower who was pushed too far. A man who discovered his brother's betrayal, confronted him, and in a moment of temporary insanity, brought on by extreme emotional distress, made a terrible mistake. You immediately cooperated with authorities, provided evidence of the fraud, and helped bring down a major corporate conspiracy. That's not what happened. Isn't it? Naomi challenged. You discovered the fraud. You confronted Julian. And yes, you killed him, but you're not running. You're not hiding. You're taking responsibility. Vincent looked between the two women, his mind struggling to process. You're asking me to turn myself in. Yes, Sienna said simply. But strategically. With legal representation. With evidence that shows the full context of what happened. With a narrative that tells the truth, all of it, including Julian's crimes. The DA will still charge me with murder. First degree, probably, Naomi admitted. But with the right defense, with the emotional context, with your cooperation in exposing Titan Industries, we might get it reduced. Manslaughter. Maybe even voluntary manslaughter with extreme emotional disturbance. You'd serve time, yes. But maybe 5 to 15 years instead of 25 to life. 5 to 15 years. Vincent said the numbers like a foreign language. Or, Sienna said carefully, you could run. Disappear. But you'd spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder. And Ashford walks free. Titan Industries continues destroying companies and lives. Julian's fraud gets buried. Everyone loses except the people who deserve to. Vincent's legs gave out. He sank onto a stack of pallets, his head in his hands. 5 to 15 years. His company, gone. His reputation, destroyed. His freedom, forfeit. But Julian's betrayal, exposed. Ashford and Titan Industries, finally facing consequences. The truth, out in the open. I need to know something, Vincent said, looking up at Naomi. If I do this, if I turn myself in, cooperate, tell everything, will it matter? Will it actually bring them down? Naomi's smile was sharp as a blade. Vincent, I've been building a case against Titan Industries for 8 months. Ever since I found the first discrepancy in your books. I knew something was wrong, I just didn't know how deep it went. With Julian's evidence, with your testimony, with Ashford's direct involvement documented in these contracts, we can destroy them. Completely. And the employees at Caldwell Brothers. The company can survive this, Naomi said firmly. The fraud was Julian's, not yours. With proper legal maneuvering, we can protect the business, ensure everyone keeps their jobs. You built something real, Vincent. Something bigger than one man's betrayal. Vincent closed his eyes, seeing his father's face again. Thomas Caldwell had been a hard man, but fair. He taught his sons to take responsibility for their actions, to face consequences head-on, to never run from the truth. Fix what you've broken, son. Okay, Vincent whispered. Then, louder, okay. I'll do it. I'll turn myself in. I'll testify against Titan Industries. All of it. Naomi's shoulders sagged with relief. Sienna nodded once, sharp and approving. But I have conditions, Vincent continued, his voice growing stronger. Julian gets buried with honors. Whatever he did, he was still my brother. My parents are buried at Oak Hill Cemetery in Marietta. He goes next to them. Caldwell Brothers pays for the funeral. Vincent, Naomi started. No. That's non-negotiable. And second, every employee gets a bonus. From the money we recover from Julian's offshore accounts. They've worked hard, trusted us, and they're about to find out one of their bosses was a criminal. They deserve something. Anything else? Sienna asked, and there was respect in her voice now. Vincent stood, walking one last time to his brother's body. He knelt down, his hand hovering over Julian's face, the face that looked so much like his own, like their father's, like the ghosts of who they'd both been before betrayal and murder. I'm sorry I wasn't the brother you needed, Vincent said softly. I'm sorry I didn't see your pain. I'm sorry for all of it. But I promise you, Jules, your death won't be meaningless. I'll make sure of it. He stood, turning to face the women who were either his salvation or his damnation. Maybe both. Let's do this right, Vincent said. Let's do it by the book. I want to call the police myself. I want to make the statement myself. And I want Julian's crimes exposed alongside mine. Complete transparency. Naomi pulled out her phone. I'll call my contact in the Atlanta PD. Detective Marcus, she caught herself. Detective Harrison. He's honest. Fair. He'll make sure this is handled properly. One more thing, Vincent said. Before they arrive. I need to call someone. Who? Naomi asked warily. Julian's ex-wife. Rebecca. She deserves to hear this from me, not from the news. And... His voice cracked. She deserves to know he wasn't all bad. That once, a long time ago, he was a good man who made terrible choices. Sienna and Naomi exchanged glances. Finally, Naomi nodded. You have 10 minutes before I make the call. Use them wisely. Vincent stepped outside into the cool Atlanta night. The city sprawled before him, lights twinkling like grounded stars, the city he'd helped build, the skyline punctuated by his company's work. In a few hours, he'd be in handcuffs. In a few months, probably in a courtroom. In a few years, in a cell. But he'd be free in a way Julian never was, free from lies, from betrayal, from the weight of secrets. He dialed Rebecca's number. She answered on the third ring, her voice sleepy and confused. Vincent? It's almost midnight. What? Rebecca, I need you to sit down, he said. There's something I have to tell you. About Julian. And about me. And I need you to listen all the way through before you say anything. Vincent, you're scaring me. I know. I'm scared too. But you deserve the truth. All of it. And standing under the stars, with his brother's blood still on his hands and his future crumbling like sand, Vincent Caldwell did something he should have done years ago. He told the truth. Every word of it. 3 years later. The Georgia sun felt different on the other side of the walls. Vincent Caldwell stood in the courtyard of Macon State Prison, his hands no longer stained with blood but calloused from 3 years of kitchen duty, library work, and the kind of honest labor that had nothing to do with building empires. He was 45 now, but he looked older, gray threading through his dark hair, lines etched deep around his eyes. The kind of lines that came from sleepless nights and the weight of irreversible choices. But his eyes were clear. Maybe for the first time in years. Caldwell. The guard's voice echoed across the yard. You've got a visitor. Vincent's heart kicked against his ribs. Visitors were rare. Naomi came monthly, bringing legal updates and news of the outside world. Rebecca had come once, 2 years ago, to tell him she'd forgiven him even if she couldn't forget. That had meant something. Everything, maybe. But this was Wednesday. No one visited on Wednesdays. The visitation room smelled like industrial cleaner and broken dreams. Vincent sat at the scarred table, his hands folded, waiting. When the door opened, he didn't recognize the woman at first. She was younger than he expected, maybe 25, with Julian's gray eyes and their mother's delicate features. She wore a simple dress and carried herself with a nervous dignity that made Vincent's chest constrict. Uncle Vincent. Her voice trembled. Sophia. Julian's daughter from his first marriage. Vincent had only met her a handful of times. Julian had been a distant father at best, and after the divorce, contact had been minimal. She would have been 22 when Julian died. When Vincent killed him. Sophia. His voice came out rough. I didn't expect you. She sat across from him, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles went white. I read the trial transcripts. All of them. And the articles about Titan Industries. And the interviews you gave to the FBI. She paused, swallowing hard. I needed to understand why you killed my father. Vincent's instinct was to apologize, to beg forgiveness, to prostrate himself before this young woman whose father he'd taken. But he'd learned in 3 years of therapy, mandated and voluntary, those empty apologies meant nothing. Only truth mattered. Your father betrayed me, Vincent said quietly. He stole millions, tried to send me to prison, and was going to destroy everything we'd built together. And in that moment, I was so angry, so hurt, that I made a choice I can never take back. I killed him. And I've had to live with that every day since. Tears streaked down Sophia's face. He wasn't a good father. I know that. After Mom divorced him, he barely called. Barely remembered my birthday. I spent years being angry at him for choosing money and work over me. She wiped her eyes roughly. But he was still my dad. And you took him away. I know. Vincent's own eyes burned. I'm so sorry, Sophia. Not because I want your forgiveness, I don't deserve it. But because you deserved better. You deserved a father who loved you. You deserved to have more time with him, even if he was flawed. I took that choice from you. They sat in silence, the air thick with grief and regret. Finally, Sophia reached into her purse and pulled out a letter, yellowed, creased from being folded and unfolded countless times. Dad wrote this the night before he died, she said. I found it in his apartment when I was clearing out his things. It was addressed to me, but he never sent it. She slid it across the table. Vincent's hand shook as he unfolded it. Sophia. I don't know if I'll ever have the courage to send this, but I need to write it down. I need to confess to someone, and you're the only person whose opinion has ever really mattered to me, even though I've been too much of a coward to show it. I've done something terrible. 4 years, I've been stealing from the company, from Vincent, from everything we built. And tomorrow night, I'm going to complete the betrayal. I'm selling everything and framing your uncle for my crimes. I tell myself I have reasons. That Vincent overshadowed me, that I deserved more recognition, that I was just taking what should have been mine. But the truth is simpler and uglier. I was jealous. Jealous of how easily people respected him. Jealous of how he could build something from nothing while I always felt like I was playing catch-up. Jealous that even you, when you were little, always wanted Uncle Vincent to read you bedtime stories instead of me. I became the villain in my own life, and I don't know how to stop. But I want you to know something. Whatever happens, whatever you hear about me after this, know that you were the one good thing I ever made. You were the only time I got it right. And I'm sorry I wasn't the father you deserved. I love you. I'm sorry I never knew how to show it. Dad. Vincent's vision blurred. His hands trembled so badly the letter shook. He knew, he whispered. He knew what he was doing was wrong. He knew, and he did it anyway. He was going to back out, Sophia said, her voice thick with tears. I found other documents. Emails. He'd contacted a lawyer, not the one helping him with the fraud, a different one. He was going to confess everything, try to make a deal. He wrote that letter the night before he was supposed to meet you. I think he was trying to work up the courage to tell you the truth. The words hit Vincent like a physical blow. Julian had been planning to confess. Had been trying to find a way back from the edge. And Vincent had killed him before he could. I didn't know, Vincent said brokenly. God, Sophia. I didn't know. If I'd just waited, if I'd given him a chance to explain. Would it have changed anything? Sophia asked. Would you have forgiven him? Vincent thought about that night in the warehouse. The rage, the betrayal, the gun heavy in his hand. Would he have listened if Julian had started with I'm sorry? Would he have been able to hear anything past the roaring in his ears? I don't know, he admitted. I want to say yes. I want to believe I would have given him a chance. But honestly, I was so far gone in my anger, I'm not sure I could have heard him even if he'd tried. Sophia nodded slowly, as if that answer satisfied something in her. The prosecutor wanted me to testify against you at sentencing. To talk about how my father's death destroyed me, how you took away my chance at reconciliation. Why didn't you? Because it wouldn't have been the whole truth. Sophia's grey eyes, Julian's eyes, their father's eyes, met his steadily. Yes, you took my father from me. But he'd already been leaving for years. Every missed birthday, every forgotten call, every promise broken. He took himself from me long before you pulled that trigger. She stood, preparing to leave. Vincent stood too, desperate to say something, anything, that might matter. Sophia, wait. I know this doesn't change anything, but your father wasn't all bad. When we were kids, he was my best friend. He was funny and kind and brave. He taught me how to throw a curveball. He talked me through my first heartbreak. Somewhere along the way, We both lost sight of who we were supposed to be. But that boy, the good man he could have been, he was real. He existed. I know, Sophia said softly. Mom told me stories. And sometimes, when I was really little, I'd catch glimpses of that man. Usually when he didn't know I was watching. She paused at the door. Uncle Vincent? What you did was wrong. Taking a life is always wrong. But I understand why you did it. And I think I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because carrying hate is too heavy. Dad taught me that, even if he didn't mean to. Thank you, Vincent whispered. That means more than you know. She left, and Vincent stood alone in the visitation room, Julian's letter still clutched in his hands. He read it again, and again, memorizing every word, every hint of the brother he'd lost long before that night in the warehouse. 6 months later. The parole hearing was held on a Tuesday morning in October. Vincent sat in his prison-issued clothing, his hands folded, while the board reviewed his case. Naomi sat beside him, impeccable as always, her briefcase full of character witnesses and documentation of his exemplary behavior. Mr. Caldwell, the board chair said, a severe woman with reading glasses perched on her nose. You've served 3.5 years of a 7-year sentence for voluntary manslaughter. You've completed anger management, trauma therapy, and victim impact courses. You've been a model prisoner. The question before us is simple. Do you deserve early release? Vincent had prepared for this moment. Naomi had coached him on what to say, how to present himself. But when he opened his mouth, the practiced words evaporated. No, he said simply. I don't deserve it. Naomi's head snapped toward him. He felt her warning glare but continued anyway. I killed my brother. I took a life. And while I had reasons, terrible, painful reasons, nothing justifies what I did. Nothing. Vincent's voice was steady, clear. But I've learned something in 3 years. Redemption isn't about deserving. It's about what you do with the time you're given. And if you release me today, I'll spend every remaining day of my life trying to honor my brother's memory, the good parts of it, and the second chance I don't deserve. The board members exchanged glances. The chair leaned forward. What would you do, Mr. Caldwell, if we granted parole? I'd go back to work, Vincent said. Not at Caldwell Brothers. I sold my shares to establish a trust for the employees. But Naomi and I have been planning something new. A foundation for families affected by white-collar crime. Because Julian wasn't the only person who ever betrayed someone they loved for money. And I'm not the only person who ever made an irreversible choice in a moment of pain. He pulled out a folder Naomi had brought, detailed plans, funding structures, partnerships with legal aid organizations. We want to help people caught in the crossfire of fraud and betrayal. We want to provide counseling, legal support, financial assistance. We want to make sure what happened to me and Julian, the whole terrible cycle of it, doesn't destroy other families. Vincent's voice grew passionate. I can't bring my brother back. I can't undo what I did. But maybe I can stop someone else from making the same mistake. Maybe I can help families heal before they reach the breaking point. The board chair studied him for a long moment. And the money for this foundation? Where does it come from? The 18 million Julian embezzled was recovered, Naomi interjected smoothly. Vincent has allocated 15 million to establish the foundation. The remaining 3 million went to restitution for affected parties and legal fees. Additionally, the settlement from Titan Industries, they paid 6 to 7 million in penalties after Vincent's testimony brought down their fraud ring, has been partially allocated to the foundation as well. So you profited from your brother's crimes, another board member said skeptically. No, Vincent said firmly. I'm using money that destroyed my family to try and save others. There's a difference. Silence fell over the room. The board members huddled, whispering among themselves. Vincent felt Naomi's hand find his under the table, squeezing once, reassurance or goodbye, he wasn't sure. Finally, the chair looked up. Mr. Caldwell, this board has reviewed your case extensively. We've read the testimonials from fellow inmates, from staff, from the victims of your brother's fraud who you helped during the Titan Industries investigation. We've considered your remorse, your cooperation, and your plans for the future. Vincent held his breath. Parole is granted, effective immediately. With conditions, you'll report to a parole officer weekly for 2 years, continue therapy, and stay employed. Any violation results in immediate return to custody. Do you understand? Yes, Vincent managed. Yes, I understand. Thank you. Don't thank us, Mr. Caldwell. Thank the people who believed you deserve a second chance. And prove them right. 1 year later, the Caldwell Foundation offices occupied a modest building in downtown Atlanta, just blocks from where Caldwell Brothers Construction once had its headquarters. Vincent arrived early every morning, before the staff, and stayed late most nights. Today was different though. Today was the anniversary. 5 years since Julian died. Vincent stood in his office, looking out at the city skyline, the buildings he'd helped construct, the life he'd rebuilt from ruins. On his desk sat 2 photographs, one of him and Julian as children, arms around each other's shoulders, grinning at the camera. The other of Sophia at her wedding 6 months ago, Vincent walking her down the aisle because she'd asked him to. You would have been proud of her, Vincent said to the photograph of young Julian. She's stronger than both of us ever were. Smarter too. A knock on the door. Naomi entered, carrying coffee and files. Ready for the meeting. Almost. Vincent picked up the speech he'd been preparing. Do you think this is right? Speaking publicly about Julian, about what happened. Naomi considered. I think honesty is always right. And people need to hear your story, not to excuse what you did, but to understand how betrayal and violence destroy everyone they touch. If one person hears you and chooses differently, chooses to walk away instead of pulling the trigger, isn't that worth it? Vincent nodded. The conference was at 2 p.m., a gathering of legal professionals, victims' advocates, and families affected by white-collar crime. He was the keynote speaker, from betrayal to redemption, one man's journey through violence and back. His phone buzzed. A text from Sophia. Good luck today, Uncle V. Dad would be proud of what you're building. I know I am. Vincent's throat tightened. He typed back, thank you. That means everything. You know, Naomi said, settling into the chair across from his desk. When I first met you, you were this arrogant, confident man who thought he could build anything, solve any problem. You were so sure of yourself. And now? Vincent asked. Now you're humble. Broken and rebuilt. Still building, but building something that actually matters. She smiled. I prefer this version. Even though this version is a murderer. This version is a man who made a terrible mistake and chose to let it transform him instead of destroy him. That's rare, Vincent. Most people either deny what they've done or let it consume them. You've done neither. Vincent looked at the photographs again, past and present, innocence and hard-won wisdom. I think about him every day. Julian. I think about the moment I pulled the trigger and wonder if I could have chosen differently. If I'd taken just one more breath, said one more word, given him one more second. You can't live in that moment forever, Naomi said gently. You've done the work. You've faced justice, made amends where you could, and built something meaningful from the ashes. At some point, you have to forgive yourself. I don't know if I can. Then keep trying. That's all any of us can do. At 2 p.m., Vincent stood before 200 people and told his story. All of it. The betrayal, the rage, the murder, the consequences. He didn't minimize what he'd done or paint himself as a victim. He simply told the truth. I killed my brother, he said, his voice carrying through the silent auditorium. And I will carry that weight for the rest of my life. But I've learned that redemption isn't about erasing the past, it's about what you build on top of the ruins. It's about choosing, every single day, to be better than the worst thing you've ever done. When he finished, there were tears in the audience. Some of anger, some of recognition, some of hope. A woman in the front row, whose husband had embezzled from his company before committing suicide, stood and applauded. Then another person. And another. Not because what Vincent had done was right, but because he'd survived it, and was trying to help others survive too. After the conference, Vincent drove to Oak Hill Cemetery in Marietta. He parked and walked to the family plot where his parents and Julian rested. The headstone was simple. Julian Thomas Caldwell 1981 to 2020 beloved son, father, brother forgiven. Vincent knelt, placing fresh flowers on the grave. Hey, Jules. It's me again. I know I come every week, and you're probably tired of hearing from me. But I need to tell you something. The cemetery was quiet except for birdsong and distant traffic. Sophia's pregnant. You're going to be a grandfather. She's naming the baby Julian if it's a boy, Julia if it's a girl. She wanted you to know. Vincent's voice cracked. And the foundation helped 32 families last month. 32 people who didn't have to choose what I chose. Who got help before everything fell apart. He traced his fingers over the word forgiven on the headstone. I don't know if you can hear me, wherever you are. I don't know if you forgive me or hate me or feel anything at all. But I forgive you, Julian. For the betrayal, for the stealing, for all of it. You were hurting and you made bad choices. I understand that now. And I hope, wherever you are, you found peace. Vincent stood, preparing to leave. As he turned, he saw a figure standing nearby, a man in his 60s with kind eyes and a gentle smile. Forgive me, the man said. I didn't mean to intrude. I'm Father Michael, from St. Catherine's down the road. I come here sometimes to visit parishioners. It's fine, Vincent said. I was just leaving. You're Vincent Caldwell, Father Michael said. I recognize you from the news. From the foundation. Vincent tensed, waiting for judgment or condemnation. What you're doing, Father Michael continued, is important. Redemption isn't cheap or easy. It costs everything. But it's always possible. Always. Even for someone like me. Especially for someone like you. Because you understand the cost of violence. You understand what it takes from everyone it touches. That understanding is precious. Don't waste it. Father Michael walked away, leaving Vincent alone with his brother's grave and the weight of 5 years of grief and growth. As the sun set over the cemetery, painting everything in shades of gold and amber, Vincent felt something shift inside him. Not forgiveness. Not quite. But perhaps the beginning of it. The first small step toward the man he was trying to become. I love you, Julian, he said to the headstone. I always did. Even when I hated you. Even when I killed you. I love you. The words hung in the air like a prayer or a promise. Vincent walked back to his car, got in, and drove toward his future. Uncertain, complicated, but his. He'd never stop being the man who killed his brother. That truth was etched into his soul as permanently as Julian's name on granite. But he was also the man who chose to transform that truth into something that might, someday, save someone else. And in the end, that had to be enough. 10 years later, Vincent Caldwell stood in the newly expanded offices of the Caldwell Foundation, watching his team, 37 employees now, work with families across 3 states. The walls were covered with photographs, families reunited, lives rebuilt, second chances seized. On his desk, 2 new photographs joined the old ones. Sophia's children, Julian Jr., now 9, and his sister Maya, 6. They called Vincent Grandpa Vince and didn't know the full story yet. Someday they would. Someday Vincent would sit them down and tell them about their grandfather, about betrayal and murder and redemption. But for now, they just knew him as the man who showed up for every birthday, every school play, every important moment. The man who was trying, every single day, to be worthy of the second chance he'd been given. His phone rang. Naomi. Turn on the news, she said without preamble. Channel 5. Vincent grabbed the remote. The news anchor's voice filled the office. In a landmark decision, the Supreme Court has ruled in favor of the Caldwell Foundation's petition to reform sentencing guidelines for crimes committed during extreme emotional disturbance. The Caldwell Standard, as it's being called, will allow judges more discretion in cases where betrayal trauma is a factor. Legal experts say this could affect thousands of cases nationally. Vincent's eyes burned. Julian's letter, the one Sophia had shared years ago, had been a key piece of evidence in the legal argument. His brother's words, his confession, his humanity, helping to change the system that had punished Vincent. You did it, Naomi said, pride evident in her voice. You actually did it. You turned tragedy into meaningful change. We did it, Vincent corrected. All of us. And Julian, in a way, he helped too. After the call ended, Vincent stood at his window, looking out at Atlanta. The city where he'd built an empire, lost a brother, and found redemption. The city where he'd learned that the worst thing you've ever done doesn't have to be the last thing you'll ever do. Somewhere across town, in a hospital room, a man was making a choice. His business partner had betrayed him, stolen everything. The man had a gun. He was one decision away from Vincent's path, from murder and grief and years of rebuilding. But the man's phone rang. A counselor from the Caldwell Foundation, reaching out because they'd been alerted by the man's lawyer. Offering help. Offering another way. The man answered the phone. And chose differently. Vincent would never know about that moment, about that choice, about that life saved. But somewhere in the fabric of the universe, the scales shifted just slightly. Not toward redemption. Redemption was too simple a word for something so complex. But toward hope. And in the end, that was enough. What do you think happens next for Vincent and the Foundation? Do you believe true redemption is possible after taking a life, or are some actions beyond forgiveness? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your perspective on this complex story of betrayal, justice, and second chances. Vincent Caldwell's journey reminds us that we are not defined solely by our worst moments, but by what we choose to do afterward. His story, from successful businessman to murderer to advocate for change, shows that even in our darkest hours, there is a path forward. Not an easy path, not one without consequences, but a path nonetheless. The Caldwell Foundation exists in this story as a testament to the transformative power of taking responsibility, facing truth, and using our pain to prevent others' suffering. Vincent will never escape what he did, and he shouldn't. But he transformed his tragedy into a force for good, and that matters. If you found this story powerful, hit that like button and subscribe for more emotionally charged stories that explore the complexity of human choices. And remember, it's never too late to choose a different path. It's never too late to build something meaningful from the ruins. Thanks once more for experiencing this journey with me. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to hear it.